Now let's get into the 12 ways to buy and sell real estate, starting with cash, wholesaling, and assigning. A great way to get started. Okay, one great way to get started in real estate is to buy properties either with cash or by wholesaling and assigning them. So the way this works is that an investor, often a bird dog or new investor, finds a property and gets it under contract. Your acquisition strategies could be none, just get it under contract. Or you may buy the property using short-term financing. You can use cash if you have it. You could use credit cards. If you have several credit cards with credit on them, you can actually put them together and come up with a certain amount of cash. You can use hard money. Hard money is basically money that's provided by hard money lenders that will loan based on the deal, not based on you or your credit. In other words, if you can get something under contract for 65 or 70 cents on the dollar, they will give you a relatively high interest loan in order to buy that property using hard money. Or you can use private money. Private money is simply money that comes from a higher net worth individual that's willing to, again, loan you money based on the deal. And then after you get the property under contract, your exit strategies could be to just assign the contract to somebody else. Give them the contract, let them put their name on the contract in exchange for a fee. Or you can do a simultaneous close. A simultaneous close hides the underlying terms of the transaction. In other words, you could buy the property in the morning for $110,000 and you can sell it in the afternoon for $150,000. And the person you buy it from never knows that you're going to sell it again or what price you're going to sell it for. And the person that you sell it to doesn't know what you actually bought it for. So that can be done through a simultaneous close. And then sometimes you can also flip the property. Flip just means you buy it, you hold it for some period of time, and then sell it again. Sometimes this is needed to season the transaction in the event that the end buyer is getting a loan and they can't actually get the loan until you've owned it for a certain amount of time. All of these strategies are recommended getting started strategies for new investors. Typical profits anywhere from $500 to $5,000 per deal, or 5 to 10% of the after repaired value minus repairs for average price deals. And the risks are low. You can always get out of a contract. Almost all law that talks about who has to execute, a buyer versus a seller, is weighted in favor of the buyer. In other words, it's very difficult to force somebody to buy a house that they don't want, but it's very easy to force somebody to sell a house if they put it under contract. So many, many variations of how this strategy works. One example I have is I actually had a property, a little town called Laga Vista. I got it under contract for $250,000. And after I got it under contract and did my due diligence on the deal, I decided I actually didn't want the property. But instead of doing what a lot of people would do, just cancel my contract and move on, I actually decided, well, let's see if anybody else wants this property. So I offered the property to a bunch of other people, and somebody else, as it turns out, came up behind me and said that they wanted to offer $260,000 for the property. So what did I do? I basically went to them and I said, okay, I'll tell you what, give me $10,000 and I will give you my contract and allow you to buy the property for $250,000. So I made $10,000 in that example for not canceling a contract. Okay, our next strategy is probably my favorite strategy of the whole lot, and that's buying subject to. Okay, buying subject to, or sub 2 as it's known in the business, is one of the most powerful techniques in all of real estate. It's where you can buy property for as little as $0 down and $0 out of pocket. And basically the way it works is this. You are making an agreement, a non-binding agreement, to make somebody else's loan payments going forward in exchange for the deed. So it's that simple. It's a great way to pick up rentals, renovations, homesteads, etc. Now the details can get a little complicated. And in Texas, because of Texas House Bill 2207, that bill says that you have to either get the consent of the lender to buy a property subject to, which you're not going to get, or complete the transaction at a title company with title insurance, which is easy to do and highly recommended. So to do it legally in Texas, you do want to close these things at a title company. But it's a great way to buy property. Usually when you see these late night commercials that says, I buy properties with no money out of pocket, you know, $0 down, etc. Usually they're talking about subject to. And for anybody who is reluctant or doesn't quite get it or understand it, I think the best way to explain it is this. Every month, if you own a home, you write out a check and you put it in an envelope and you mail it off, and the lender gets the check and they open it up and they say, ooh, money, and they cash it. And the question to ask is, does the lender care who wrote the check? In other words, do they care if your tenant mailed the mortgage payment? Do they care if your father mailed the mortgage payment? Do they care if I made the mortgage payment? And the answer is no. All the lender looks at is to see that somebody made the mortgage payment. As long as those mortgage payments keep getting made month after month after month, the lender is very happy, and they will continue to collect those payments indefinitely. So when you buy something subject to, you're basically just telling the owner, look, I will make your mortgage payments going forward if you agree to deed the property over to me so that I own it. Now, if you're buying properties that are going to be rental properties or properties that you're going to hold for a long term and resell maybe with wraparound mortgages, for example, you want to look for low fixed interest rate loans. Low interest rates, you want to make sure there's no balloon payments on the loans. But I also love to buy properties that are short-term buys. In other words, I like to buy renovation projects subject to. Why not, use money that's already on the home, the financing that's already in place. So for short-term sub-2 deals, you want to look for no prepayment penalties, but really nothing else matters. In other words, it doesn't matter what the interest rate is. I'm only going to have it for a short amount of time anyway, and it's going to always be a lot cheaper than going and getting a new loan. A little example of a deal like this, I did a little house on a street called Guernsey. Here was the deal. 4 guys each renting this house, and the 4 tenants were each paying $400 a month rent. So in other words, the house is generating $1,600 a month rent. Now the homeowner was collecting that $1,600 a month and pocketing it and not paying the mortgage payment. Turns out the mortgage payment was only $1,100 a month. So the home was going into foreclosure. Now, the home is worth $150,000. They only owed $110,000 on the note. So there's $40,000 in equity, but because the homeowner stopped paying the mortgage, the house was about to be foreclosed on. So I went to the homeowner and I said, look, I can save your credit and I can stop this foreclosure if you simply deed the property over to me. So she deeded me the property, and I caught up the payments, which cost me about $4,000. So for $4,000, what did I get? For $4,000, I got a $150,000 house that's generating $1,600 a month rent. I'm paying the $1,100 mortgage payment, so I'm getting $500 a month in positive cash flow, and I get $40,000 of instant equity because I only owe $110,000, or I should say I'm only paying the mortgage on somebody else's loan of $110,000 on that house. And that house will just keep going up and up and up in value while I keep collecting that $500 a month rent until I finally someday want to sell it and take the full profit out of it. So that's an example of buying a project's property subject to. My question to any new investor that's curious about this, I say, would you take that deal? Would you take 10 of those deals? Would you take 20 of those deals? Get enough of those deals under your belt and essentially you're done. Okay, the next strategy we're going to talk about is renovating, rehabbing, fix and flip. And I will say, of the 12 strategies that I use and the 12 strategies that I teach, this is one of the riskiest ones, but it's the one that all new investors want to do because they see this every time they watch that stupid TV show, Flip That House, where they learn about how easy it is to make big money buying and selling and renovating properties. But it is, like I said, one of the most risky strategies you can use. So here's how it works. You find a property, get the property under contract, and then you buy the property. You can use cash if you have cash. You can use hard money. We talked about that before. This is money given by a lender who will loan you money based on the deal. Sometimes you can even use conventional financing, although it's unusual because usually you don't have time to get a conventional loan. And if it's a fixer-upper, you probably can't get a conventional loan for a fixer-upper. Once you buy the property, you renovate it as needed. and after renovating it, you resell it for a profit, and your typical profit on an average house would be $15,000 to $20,000 or 15% of the after repaired value. Now, the risk. Well, renovation, managing the renovation, managing your costs, and managing the market. The market can change, and the house may not be worth as much as you estimated when you started the project. Those two factors alone can cause your profit to swing plus or minus 30%. And the question I have for all the new investors is, can anybody tell me what 15% minus 30% is? Yeah, it's minus 15%. So yes, that's why this is a very risky strategy. Very, very often, new investors overpay for properties and don't manage the renovations and miss the market and end up losing money, sometimes a lot of money, when they do these projects. And that's why of all the strategies we use, this is by far the riskiest one. But it is a very profitable strategy if done right. It's a high risk, high reward strategy. I do many renovation projects. I probably do, oh gosh, maybe 2 or 3 renovations a month even. In fact, every year I always like to tell I do at least one cat house a year. No, that's not a brothel. A cat house is a house where the owners have maybe hundreds of cats, and we go into one of these houses, and if you can stand the smell and get rid of all the cats, you can usually get really good deals on these houses and fix them up and sell them and make a profit. And that's just one of dozens and dozens of examples of the kinds of houses that we buy for renovation projects. Our next strategy is called landlording, buy and hold. One of the things I love about real estate is, besides giving you all these just different opportunities to generate income, it also gives you a lot of opportunities to create wealth. And what I always like to tell my CPA is, I want to get rich. I don't want to make any money. And what that means is that I need to generate income to pay for my lifestyle, but it's really buying and holding and growing a portfolio of properties that grows your wealth. And real estate is perfect because it lends itself to many opportunities to grow your wealth as well as generate income. Buy and hold works as follows. You find a property, get it under contract, and you buy or close on the property. Now, again, you can use conventional financing, especially if it's a pretty home. You can use cash or hard money for ugly homes, and then refinance after renovation. Now, that's my favorite way to buy rental properties. I like to buy a property. I might find a property for $65,000. I might spend $25,000 totally renovating the house, at which point maybe the house is worth $140,000. But rather than just selling it for $140,000, I go ahead and refinance it for, let's say, $110,000. You generally can't refinance it for the full retail value, but if you refinance it in my example for $110,000, what do you get? You get all of your $65,000 back, and then you get all of your $25,000 back that you spent on the renovation, and you get to pocket some additional money, maybe $10,000 or more. And by the way, you didn't sell the property, you just refinanced it. So that money you just pocketed, that profit, that's essentially tax-free. It's just a cash out. And then you get to stick a tenant in that property who will pay the mortgage and maybe even generate some cash flow for you while the property appreciates over time. Of course, after you close on the property, regardless of how you do, you lease it to a tenant. And by leasing the property, you get some short-term benefits. You get some cash flow, hopefully. Now, there's a long discussion to be had on cash flow. In some cases, some properties appreciate more and get less cash flow, and other properties appreciate maybe less but get more cash flow. So you have to look at the total return on investment. You also, though, get to take the depreciation of the property. All improvements on the property get to be deducted over 27.5 years, giving you great tax deductions. And, of course, all of the taxes you pay, interest, repairs, etc., all expenses on the property are all tax deductible for the life of the property. And then, of course, you get the long-term benefits. And the long-term benefits are appreciation. In the United States, the average appreciation rate for properties over the last 30 years is around 6%. And what that means is that if you buy a property and you hold it, it will obviously go up in value. But there's something kind of interesting about that number and what can happen. If you go ahead and find yourself a property that's what I call a good deal, you get to buy it for 80% of value. That's a good deal. It's not an unbelievable deal, but it's a good deal. And if you look real hard, occasionally you will find those good deals. So if you bought a property at 80% of value and you let that property appreciate at just 6% a year, something happens after about 7 or 8 years. You will have exceeded the 50% loan to value. What does that mean? In other words, the property will go up in value each year a little bit, and you'll pay down the loan a little bit. And after about 8 years, you're going to discover that you've got 50% equity in that property. Well, what if you bought 30 or 40 properties that way? Wow, 30 or 40 good deals. After 7 or 8 years, you could actually sell half of them and pay off the other half and own 15 or 20 properties completely loan-free, free and clear, each one generating $1,000, $1,200, maybe $1,500 a month in rent, would generate $20,000 or more of passive cash flow adjusted for inflation, and you still get all of the depreciation and tax benefits for the rest of your life. Not a bad deal. So with the buy and hold strategy, the bottom line is that typical profit, $100,000 or more per house. The catch is you've got to hold it for 5, 8, 10, 15 years. And unlike most renovation and different investing strategies where you're buying and selling or flipping, and all that really matters is what you can buy it for and what you can sell it for. If you're buying and holding, it goes down to the classic location, location, location. You want to buy properties that are in better locations that are going to be worth more, or in other words, appreciate more over the time horizon that you hold them. Of course, along the way, you have to manage your risks. Basically, all the joys that go along with being a landlord. Vacancies, repairs, these things can cost a lot at time. And you have to have a little money in reserve to cover the issues and things that come up. One of the things that I do when I teach buy and hold strategies is I actually have a separate seminar that I teach called a Get Rich Slow seminar that lays out step by step how to make $20,000 a month after 8 to 12 years, essentially implementing the strategy that I talked about on the previous slide, where you just buy and hold pretty good deals and let them appreciate over time. And a little story about this. I actually recently had my first child, and my wife asked me, gosh, what are we going to do for a college fund for our child? I said, honey, no problem. Skyview, one of the very first rental properties that I bought the property for $115,000. It's now worth about $265,000. Kids college, check. Taken care of. By the time the child is old enough to go to college, that one property alone will more than pay for all of his college needs. So